Hello YouTube. In case you are new here, I'm Aaron Dusk, and I am a self-published author of two books, The Mark of Amuli and The Varcross Key. If you want to know more about those stories, check out my website at theliteratebeast.com. I'll put a link in the description below. Speaking of self-published books, you're probably here watching this because my video title may have sparked a bit of outrage. After all, rage bait is really the only thing that seems to get any attention nowadays, but let's calm down before we jump to any conclusions. As I mentioned, I'm a self-published author, but even I have to agree and disagree with a lot of the narrative and stigma surrounding most self-published books. So let's jump headfirst into this snake pit, shall we? If you've ever been to the writers or self-publishing subreddits, you've probably seen a lot of interesting and often delusional takes on the publication process. The people who have a lot of experience in self-publishing tend to be the first to comment about the reality, while those who just write often try to discredit actual experience with a lot of whataboutism and a few one-off cases that happen with even less frequency than the lottery is won. Then you'll have the self-published authors who have usually published one or maybe two books, but they haven't really sold anything. And then they'll lament about how no one wants to buy their amazing book. And then they get ripped to shreds when people find said book on Amazon, only to then find out exactly why this self-proclaimed work of literary genius hasn't gotten any sales. Some of you out there, or perhaps many of you, are authors yourselves, either traditionally published or self-published. So you've been in the writers' places on social media, and you've probably seen the writers' lists, the self-promo retweets and replies, and you've likely clicked on a few of these books to see what was being advertised. I have clicked on quite a few of these, maybe hundreds of them, and because I like to see what people are writing about, in my genre especially. I also like to look into each book with a very kind of, and it's tough to admit this, but I will go into it looking very judgmental, with just a very judgmental eye. Of those like 100 or so books, I can almost guarantee that 80% will have typos, spelling errors, or grammatical errors within the first 10 paragraphs. Most of them will start with some kind of action or uninteresting scene, and if it's fantasy, there's a good chance I'm going to see a poorly executed prologue. Half of these books will have self-made ugly covers. More than half will have a blurb on the back that's either way too long or in the wrong tense, or doesn't really tell me much about the story, or it's boring and has a few misspellings. And by the way, if your blurb has misspellings, that's really a big red flag to a lot of readers not to even bother reading the book. Then you'll get around like the 20% or so self-published authors who have beautiful covers, a hooky and engaging blurb, a beautifully written first few pages, but the problem is they have absolutely no engagement and very few reviews. These are the books that defy the stereotypes, but they still remain buried under mounds of garbage. I've often heard self-publishing described as a cesspool by quite a few traditionally published bloggers, and unfortunately, they're not always wrong. Now, don't come for my head just yet, okay? However, what people are wrong about is the statement that everyone hates self-published books. This is complete bullshit, and I say this as a self-published author who sells books to people who have enjoyed my writing. Self-publishing allows for authors to put work out there that the big four now, will likely not pick up. It's usually too niche, or it's not the genre of the year. Traditional publishing is in the business of making money. Self-publishing is at times more of a hobby. People who read certain genres that are only found in self-published books will exclusively seek out self-published authors. But we need to be honest with ourselves here. These readers are very rare. Reading a book is more than just a financial investment. Hell, most ebooks aren't even that expensive. What is expensive is the time spent reading. Very few people have the time to invest spending 10 to 20 hours reading a book from an obscure indie author. It's a risk, and as I've seen many vloggers and booktubers and book talkers say a lot is, life is way too short to spend it reading bad books. And they're right. I read an article recently that was written back in 2011 that still kind of holds true to this day. This person was a coordinator for an independent bookstore, and they deal with a lot of self-published authors. Now, indie and self-published authors usually aren't the same. Indie authors usually, in a lot of cases, go through an independent publisher, whereas a self-published author usually does it themselves. So these coordinators, they deal a lot with self-published authors looking to get their books on shelves and even schedule events like, book signings or readings or whatever. Reading this article made me recoil a bit, but this is the harsh reality. These people absolutely hate self-published authors, and I'll give the reasons that they gave in their blog post. So the first reason they gave was their books just flat out suck. And this is usually the case for a lot of indie books, unfortunately. Bad writing, grammar, spelling, plot, and character development, all of it's bad. Bad, unmarketable cover art, which, was probably more common back in 2011 than it is now, but it's still kind of a common thing. If the book doesn't have a good cover, the bookstore's not going to be able to sell it, because regardless of what you've been told, people do judge a book by its cover. If you have an ugly cover, it's not going to sell. Your cover is one of the first things a reader is going to see, and it is one of the most important pieces of marketing that you can have for your book. The second one was self-published authors are rude, pushy, self-absorbed, and relentless. I would have called bullshit on this because so many writers are barely able to talk to people directly and have crippling anxiety and self-doubt. But these are not usually the people hawking their books to indie bookstores. I've seen Reddit posts from these types of self-published authors, and they often believe themselves to be God's gift to literature. And maybe their book is decently written, but no one wants to work with people who are this insufferable. And you see this a lot on these subreddits. And I hate to say this because I'm kind of stereotyping an entire demographic, or I'm kind of stereotyping my own demographic in a way. They're usually middle-aged men who feel entitled to the literature space because they feel like they've written the next best great American novel, when in reality, and I've read some of their work before, it sucks. And while some of them may have a gift of prose, they have absolutely no sense of storytelling or character development whatsoever, because they can't tell a story. Like, there's more that goes into writing than just writing beautiful prose. You need to be able to actually tell a story that people want to read. And the third thing that they posted was self-published authors have no sense of self-awareness. And this one is actually pretty true. As writers, we don't want to believe our books. As writers, we want to believe our books will be the next breakout success, that everyone will love what we write, that our subject matter and writing style are unique and amazing, when in reality, our writing may be mediocre at best, while unintentionally ripping off something that was written way better by somebody else. So obviously, this is just one person's experience with self-published authors, but these sentiments are sadly not rare. If you look up popular book reviewers, they won't review indie authors. They won't even accept requests from indie authors because there's just too much to wade through. When they could review traditionally published books that have been vetted by professionals that, their viewers have read or want them to review. Everyone in the self-publishing setting wants their book to be seen, but I'm sorry, there's not enough people that actually want to see them. So with the odds stacked against us, with the rise of AI and MLM-style low-content books for sale on Amazon, coupled with little to no quality assurance on self-published works, one would wonder, why even bother anymore? No one can be successful in this market. Well, yes and no, because there are a lot of blanket statements out there about self-publishing that, while for the most part may be true, are not always true. While most self-published authors will rarely sell 100 books in the book's lifetime, there are others who are making it work, and they are doing it in many ways people don't want to hear about. Now, I've told people repeatedly in the writer space that the only way you're going to make it in self-publishing is to have an audience before you publish your first book. And I'm not just talking about your circle jerk of other authors in the hashtag writing community. I'm talking about people who genuinely love reading your work. So in order to find these readers, you need to write for free. I can hear the collective gasps and groans of people out there who are thinking their writing is worth buying. But I'm going to be completely honest with you. It's not worth anything because no one knows who you are. And maybe your writing isn't good enough to sell yet, but you won't know that unless people are actually reading what you've written. Even now that I'm selling books, I still write free stories. I still get my work out there. I still, post a lot of stuff that people can read so that they can get an idea of how I write and my voice and my genre of writing. I have like 2 entire books on my website that are in the first draft that people can read for free. In fact, I've made a lot of book sales because people found my free stories on my website and decided to buy my books. These people have actually sent me messages saying that they bought my books because they read my stories for free on my website. So it works, and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. This is actually stuff that works, okay? People need to see what you write in order to gain an audience so that you can sell to these people. In fact, before I sold a single copy of anything, I found my niche and an audience, and I wrote for those people, many of whom still support me to this day. Not everything I write is something I'm going to eventually publish. Not everything I write is good, but I'm still writing for an audience I want to amass. I'm not just posting random rage bait questions on social media for engagement in the hopes that people stumble upon my book or click on my link, when people don't give 2 shits about what I'm writing. People don't give 2 shits about this stuff, okay? These are not, the people who are engaging with these types of posts are not readers. They are habitual social media scrollers, okay? They are people with 2-minute attention spans. They are probably not going to be your audience, okay? I found people who enjoy reading my stories. And you know what happened? Well, it took a while, and it took a lot of marketing and word of mouth, but those people shared my writing with other people, and those people shared it with more people. So here is the biggest question of all that I know that a lot of people are asking, and I've even asked myself this question many times before. How do you know if what you write is worth publishing? So with that question comes the answer, sorry, not everything we write is worth any money. That's the cold hard truth. Not everything Stephen King or Brandon Sanderson wrote saw the light of day because what they wrote sucked. No writer is an endless font of amazing ideas, but people who have the ability to write good stories will eventually write more good stories than bad. So, if you can gather an audience of people who don't know you from Adam, and they tell you how amazing your story is, if they tell you, you should really think about getting this published, if they say, your book had me engaged from the first page, if you get that from a lot of people, from a lot of strangers, you've probably got something that you're going to sell, that's going to sell in some way. You've got something people enjoy reading. So if you have something that people enjoy reading, you've got something that you can sell. You've got something that's marketable. The entire reason I published The Mark of Amuli was because the audience I'd gained told me, hey, you can probably get this published. Now, back then I was like, no, I can't. I mean, this is crap. But after giving the manuscript a lot of love and care and a lot of, overhauling and a lot of beta readers, a lot of people reading this, telling me what worked and what didn't work, I knew from the amount of positive feedback I was getting that, yeah, I had something that could possibly succeed. Is it a guaranteed success? Of course not. Nothing ever is a guaranteed success. But I knew that with this book, I may have something that could jumpstart my writing career. And I wasn't wrong. This is how you know you're ready to self-publish. It can even be how you know you're ready to query agents, okay? Now, as I've mentioned, will that book take off and become a hit as soon as you hit that publish button? Good Lord, no. I mean, that is such a rare thing if it even happens at all. I mean, you'd have to basically have a lot of followers on social media or have built up such a huge audience that people, are going to read your book no matter if it sucks or not. But I'm going to show you guys something interesting. I'm going to show you guys something that, I haven't shown anybody, and that's going to be my KDP book sales. I'm not going to go into Ingram Spark because that's just too much of a hassle to pull up. I'm not going to go into ACX sales. I'm going to just show you my KDP sales over the years. So these are the sales over the lifetime of my books, the Mark of Amuli and the Varcross Key both. As you can see in yellow is basically the Mark of Amuli. This is my very first book. Okay, so as you can see, it sometimes we'll have a good month. I mean, obviously my first month had $100 of sales. I already had an audience that was willing to buy the books. So I did have, sales trickling in every now and then, but for the most part, usually sales every month would hover around $20. Obviously you had some outliers like, $97, $58, but for the most part, everything pretty much stayed around $20 to $30 on average. During this time here, I was marketing like crazy. I was trying to find my audience. I was writing, for a lot of people. I was even writing free things for a lot of people. And this is a trickling audience. But at the same time, I'm still selling books. I'm selling books. I may not be making back the money that I spent on publication, but I'm selling books. In this first 3 years or so, I barely made $1,000 off of my book, and I spent let's see, how much did I spend? I think I spent around $15,000 to $16,000. I went over this in another video, but I spent a lot of money on that first book because I wanted to get it just right. I wanted to kick off my writing career with a very strong book, and for the most part, I succeeded in doing that. During this time, I was finding my audience. I had to do some giveaways. I had to put my book out there in as many spaces that I could have, I had to put my book out there in as many, spaces that would have me, which wasn't that many. And keep in mind, you're still a self-published author. No one's going to want you in their spaces for a while. And this, as I've mentioned, this is the title of the video. Nobody likes self-published authors. And unfortunately, everybody looks at us with very judgmental eyes for a very good reason. So after amassing more of an audience, take a look at what happened the moment I published the Varcross Key. It took off. This is the audience. I've been amassing an audience for 3 years, and the moment, and I've been gaining a following. I've been gaining following on Twitter. I've been using social media to my advantage. I redid my website, and then look what happened the moment I published the Varcross Key. And it's been like this. It's been hovering around, $350 to $400 in sales a day. I'm sorry, a month. That would be nice, a day, but a month over the last, few months. Of course, August now we're at, $26, and we're on day 2 of August. But for the most part, it's been hovering around, $350 to $400 a month in book sales. And this includes, $300 to $400 a month in royalties. That's a huge jump, okay? But I want you to all keep in mind, this is not enough to live off of, okay? I'm not including, like I said, I'm not including ACX or Ingram Spark royalties, which usually hover between $100 to $500. But I'm just going off of book royalties for KDP only, because this is where I sell the majority of my books. To be able to live off of your writing takes a lot of time. I make more from Patreon right now than I do KDP book royalties. And I have an amazing group of readers who I engage with daily. There are days when I'm having doubts or I'm stressing about real life issues, but they're always there. These are my loyal readers. They're wishing me the best. They're encouraging me. If you can get readers like that, then you're well on your way to success. In fact, I would even say that's a success in itself. And the numbers don't lie. And this is only after my second book. After my third book, I'll probably see another jump in sales. And who knows, after I finish the audiobook of The Varcross Key, which is probably going to be released in the next month or so, I may see an even bigger jump in book sales. So to get back to the topic of today's video, no, everyone does not hate self-published books. They just can't find the good ones. As authors with little to no representation in the business, we need to make the readers care about what we've written. And yes, that means writing for free sometimes. That means, biting the bullet and just accepting that not everything we write is going to be worth money. That means spending money to publish a book, a lot of money in a lot of cases. That means marketing and interacting with readers. So in summary, no one is going to care about your writing until you make them care about your writing. And that's on you. That is on you 100%. You have to put in the work. You have to do everything you can to make your readers care about you and care about your work. So that's really all I have today. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I try to get at least one video out a week, and I'm still working on this channel's main focus. So at this time, I want to give a shout out to all of my Wilker Plus members on Patreon, as well as thank all of my patrons in general for their support, especially during this time. You guys have helped me weather a lot of uncertainty, as well as given me the encouragement I needed, during the times that I needed it. It's not just my patrons, it's my readers as well. All of you have done so much for me, and I just want to tell you all how much I truly appreciate you, and how incredibly lucky I am to have reached you and that you've reached out to me. And with that, I will see you guys next time.